Hello, my name is Hollow, this is a Rage Gaming video, and we don't have any time for any of that. Mother of God! Rise finally dropped its trailer 2 late last night during the Game Awards. It was barely 1 minute long, but thankfully they uploaded a much more complete 3-minute trailer on their own pages instead of just that teaser that we saw during the stream. In that is so much new information, as well as fleshing out a lot of things that we've been told about, including new monsters, the weapons, armor, all kinds of new details about that second map, the hub, and even more. I have an absolute massive list of awesome stuff to break down and discuss, so let's stop wasting time and just do it. But where to start? Well, I think we're going to bounce around that trailer wherever we can, but we're going to start where it began, the new village and the hub of Rise. This wonderful showcase of KAMURA village, which has lots of details and amazingly layered terrain we can explore and climb all over, just like, say, the outside levels of Rise. The best part of the village in Rise is its progression of what we've seen in the past. It just feels less restricted compared to any other hub we've had in the past, even world. So right off the bat, yep, we have multiplayer in town now. Instead of having sections where we can see each other and then main areas that are solo, we finally get to hang out in the full thing, the full hub, together. This is a nice but important change because it won't be strangely separated after every hub. We'll just come back together and it'll feel more fluid, just like that movement we'll have in the hub itself. As you can see, not only are we together, but we can use the Wirebug movement and Palamute mounted movement here as well. This actually indicates that the hub is pretty big and the added movement will be important. As I mentioned, we can also climb up and over everything in KAMURA, really high up like on the main building, or blasting around the streets with our Wirebugs. That's what I mean by less restricted. It's like moving around in an actual hunt, but in the hub. Now, obviously, we have various features that we will come to expect in any hub from any Monster Hunter, like merchants, places to eat, the forge, and so on. But returning in Rise is a very important feature, the village pet. In this case, it's not a cute little pig anymore, but an adorable owl that I assume Josh lost his mind over.
You can have one of the little owl things on your Amazon Hunter, and you know what? Oh, too cute. Too right!
Yep, yeah, he did. The Cahoots are the new popular pet in KAMURA, beloved for their affectionate and clever nature. But not only will these fluffballs hang out with us in town, they're actually going to help you out during quests, revealing the positions of monsters for us, which is insanely useful. So I'm very happy to hear that a pet will have a more active role in the game, but we'll still be able to dress them up in different outfits and give them attention regularly, which is wonderful. Lastly though, for the hub, the NPCs now have their names and details revealed. During that trailer we saw tons of little moments, but on the official website we have much more detail. From left to right we have Fugun the Elder, Hinoa the Quest Maiden, that's right, our new handler if you played World, Yomogi the Chef, Hammond the Blacksmith, who looks a bit like a sad boy, and finally Komitsu the Sweet Tooth, who's just kind of a random little girl who really wants to help. Not much is known about her yet though. Naturally, we do know that Fugun is part of the main story and will be our sort of new commander style character, while Hinoa is in charge of the village quests. We've seen in the original trailer that there is 2 sisters, they're twins. As it turns out, they're going to serve as both our village and gathering hub quest givers separately. Interestingly, our merchant of the town, Kagero, has some important features to his shop. Obviously he'll sell you stuff, but sometimes he's going to hold sales which will have half the prices on many items, and during periods like that he'll also run a lottery. That will grant you prizes depending on your luck, because the lottery can only be played once per each sale, which only happens sometimes, or if you have up to 3 amiibos you could do it 3 times a day. Tons of details about the hub there. Now let's move on to the new map, or actually technically not a new region, but yes, a new map. This is our new flooded forest. Returning from the past games like Monster Hunter 3, this new version of the flooded forest will provide players the opportunity to explore and battle fierce monsters in this overground and underground waterlogged setting. So yeah, you might see this as a familiar map if you played the older games. It's the same style, but it is a different part of that region with totally new areas to explore. It's a water-filled swamp style of map with a totally different theme entirely to the first map, and features a massive Aztec style pyramid that we can actually go up and climb and oversee the entire area. I love the freedom to climb like that. We did get a tiny glimpse of the camp in this forest, and from a look at the layout layout of the map, it seems like there's going to be areas that are much higher up, and then areas that are going to be down below in what we would call water caves. Basically, this map will feature a lot of layered terrain, which is obviously going to take advantage of that new movement. I find myself thinking, you know, though this map is swampy in its nature, it looks really good, and it only gets better when we talk about the new monsters we're going to find here, because it's monster time. Now let's begin with the fact that the monsters all will have cinematic intros, just like what we saw in World and Iceborne, which is a great way to introduce a new monster, giving you the feeling of its vibe and its nature. But who cares about any of that? We have two new monsters that we're already seeing, which are two yokai types. Firstly, the Somnacanth. This is in fact the mermaid type that Ichinose hinted at with his minimal artwork we talked about before. What do you think? Looks just the same, right? Jokes aside, they did actually give us some great speculation, and we weren't actually wrong about the source of inspiration for that monster, the Japanese mermaid. Its official description is as follows: this aquatic serpent crests on moonlight-lit nights, which is why people often mistake it as a mermaid. Now, despite its appearance, this is an extremely aggressive monster, allowing no trespassers. It's going to use an organ on its neck that's going to expel intoxicating sleep powder, knocking out its prey before it has a chance to run away. What a terrifying description. And it's so good to see a yokai type like this. They've done such a good job of capturing a demonic style of monster. And God, look at the length of it. Comparable to an elder dragon in its size, but the reason for that is because it's not an elder dragon, it's actually a Leviathan class of monster. That's right, we finally have them back after none being in World, which means it's technically possible that we could see a Legiacrus, maybe even in this flooded forest region. However, it certainly doesn't look like we have underwater combat in Rise as of yet, and I've been told that that fight wouldn't be the same without it. Whatever the case, when it comes to Somna here, we can see that this monster is hyper agile and quite floaty in its movement thanks to its long length and the use of its tail. Something not mentioned in its description is this strange clapping move that it has. While laying on its back all casual, it looks like it's generating a sort of healing aura or opening a clam. Maybe hunters could steal that effect or simply flinch her out of that move. Now, moving on though, our second new monster, the Bishaten. This is that Tengu monster type, another yokai inspired monster, just missing that absolute unit of a nose in the original art by Ichinose. This one is actually a fanged beast, comparable to say Rajang or a Quechuacha. I'd thought that the Tengu monster would either be a bird or monkey in nature, so I'm happy that I was on the right track, though I was thinking more bird. The Bishaten's official description is as follows though: a monster with a distinctive tail, while omnivorous, actually has a preference for fruit and keeps various fruit with all kinds of effects in its belly pouch. It's an incredibly curious creature that loves to play tricks on people, which explains its unique fruit attack in the trailer. This fellow has those tight and short wings for burst movement, while also making use of that tail to gain height and mobility. The tail itself is really cool. It looks like another claw on a long arm. And then obviously it has that huge range attack where it sends colored fruit from its belly, and we see they have different auras about them. One of them has a purple effect, so that could be poison. We seem to see an orange effect on another, that could be paralysis. And then the pink fruit, I'm not sure about. What do you think that one is? Lastly though, we do see the Bishaten make use of those wings and that tail for some unique movement. We have a corkscrew charge attack, and then clever hops from side to side using the tail as a sort of pogo stick. Moving on then, how about some familiar faces? Firstly, the Ludroth is back. Oh, sorry, the Royal Ludroth. This is actually the larger male form of the regular Ludroth, and it's ready to sponge up the place. Using that sponge-like mane, it'll absorb water to keep itself from drying out while it's on land. But when the sponges lose their moisture, the Ludroth will then seek out more water to recover. A nice vulnerable period. During the fight though, you'll see it spew out mucus to try to knock down its prey, which is what we see flying towards the hunter in the combat clip. Speaking of another familiar face though, we do have the Great Rogi. Returning from 3rd gen also, this is the poison type of the raptor trios of Rogi, Baggy and Jaggy. Either way, this larger form of the regular Rogi also travels in packs, but is its most toxic member. Like a League of Legends player. Using that poison sac, it'll spit a cloud of poison mist that we're just gonna have to avoid. We also see during the trailer some small monsters that are gonna return in this area, like the Slagtoth or other annoying insect types, but what we really care about is this. This might be familiar to older gen fans, because it certainly seems like the disgusting Khezu is coming back to Rise after all. This is actually its raw, an attack that comes from its own perspective, where it's using its electric attack to take down a baggie. Normally we see that leechy monster of Khezu on, say, an ice map around caves, but we do know that below, in the lower areas of this map, there are actually caves around in the flooded forest. I don't know whether I'm looking forward to more Khezu. They are disgusting, but I do remember their armor looking like a horror film, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that in Rise. Okay, so moving on from monsters directly, we now get to see a great showcase of the story and setting for Rise in the second trailer, where we saw cinematics that we'll actually see in-game that are definitely comparable to the storytelling style of World. So we'll have more voice acting, brilliant music, and ongoing cutscenes where we see ourselves protecting the village from a major threat due to the massive stampede of various monsters that together attack the village. This is called the Rampage, and has actually happened many times before, the worst one 50 years ago. Throughout the story, we're finding out why this happened, and we're trying to stop the monsters from doing it again. But with that, we will be making use of siege weapons once more, most likely used during key encounters and special events rather than on your usual hunts. I do think that they've learned a lot about how siege weapons work and what doesn't work for a siege weapon via World. They were generally much better in Iceborne than they were in the original. For example, that Gatling gun where we could move around on it. But we do have a new siege weapon that was shown in this trailer, the bamboo looking contraption. What on earth will this do? The bottom of it looks orange, so you know, very hot, yet the tubes are very small. Maybe it's gonna shoot like a heated dart or some sort. Other than that, we do have the usual cannons and ballista, but no Dragonator was spotted. Yet. Around that point of the trailer though, we did see that cinematic moment of multiple monsters rampaging, including those that we've seen revealed in social media clips that I've been covering in my Rise News recaps. We have the Acnosom, the Tetranodon, and the Great Izuchi, as well as our bear boy Azuros, and lastly a Rathalos that's shown flying over them all in the back. Like I said, it looks like we're going to face all of these at once, using that special siege defense area to face it down. That's going to be crazy. Lastly, we finally get another look at the big bad of this story, the Magnamalo, which appears to have a poor Azuroth in its mouth this time. You leave that bear alone. This actually gives us a good awareness of the sheer size of the Magna. The Azuros is a pretty big monster compared to, say, the player when it's standing up. Therefore, Magnamalo is massive. We do see an image of him in game thanks to the official website though, and Jesus, look at the size of him. It looks so intimidating, and the colors are really nice. I'm happy with this as a main story monster this time. Moving on though, what types of weapons and armor did we see during the trailer? Well, in terms of attacks, we saw some new Wirebug attacks. These are actually called SILKBIND attacks, and we've seen more of them in detail here. Two specifically, the heavy bowgun, which will use a SILKBIND attack to create a shield around themselves, which in this case will block a projectile from the Royal Ludroth. Now, do you think this is a full parry or block immunity on a cooldown? It seems extremely useful, too useful to be able to use constantly. And then secondly, we have the Switch Axe aerial combat, where they use the wire movement and the SILKBIND attack. This is comparable to the aerial stuff we saw from the Greatsword, which is cool. Both weapons are slow and heavy with big powerful hits, so having aerial options gives them a way to charge up big attacks while also still being mobile. So I reckon both weapon users should be happy about that. But this one looks really cool. It's very piercing and chargy. But what about equipment itself? During various sections we get tiny clips of combat, so I'm going to make my best guesses, but you let me know what you guys think they are. Could be wrong about some of these. Here we see what seems to be maybe a Bishaten Switch Axe. It has this crazy ship wheel thing in the middle of it. Here we see what could be the Azura Switch Axe, since it looks so chunky. Others in that hunt had the Izuchi hammer, and then it also looks like we had an ingot, sword, and shield on the left. Dude, check out the crazy whipping wire attack the Palamute is using here. It's got wide reach, and the weapon itself is sharp, right? So maybe that could cut off parts of a monster. The next clip has the hunting horn, which actually looks cool considering I think that's just an ingot hunting horn. But if we focus more on armor now, we see the Bishaten and Tetranodon armor sets here. A close look here seems to be the Somnacanth armor, while we have a look at our cute Kohoot. This bowgunner is using the basic bone set with a Rathalos user running in with their SNS on the right, followed by a Tetranodon using a lance. Here's a fun one though. Silly Armor seems to be back. It looks like this might be the Great Roggy Armor to me, which is a total cowboy look. The Palico looks like he's in the same set too. It's just nice to have Silly Armor back early into Rise. Another crazy one though is the Royal Ludroth Armor that we see when we're looking at those siege weapons. Look at this yellow dude. He thinks he's a sponge. So that's our look at different weapons and armors that we saw. But did you know about the new equipment slot that we're going to have in Rise? Not ever directly shown in the trailer, but it was explained on their socials. This new bracelet item is called the Petalace. It's a bracelet made from a plant known as the Sending Sprig, and it can be equipped just like a weapon or piece of armor. So the pollen birds will find will attach to the Petalace and envelop the hunter in what is known as a sweet, energizing fragrance that grants a permanent status boost until the end of your quest. And there's lots of different types of Petalace. Some will raise your attack, others will raise your maximum health, and they suggest that we pick a type that suits our needs. How cool is that? We're gonna have an entirely new type of equipment to run in our builds, and it just sounds really useful. But moving on though, we have some new endemic life. Firstly, the Gigana Aprana type. This species of carnivorous fish goes nuts when you give them raw meat, so a monster or hunter nearby is bound to get swept up in their ferocious behavior, taking damage in the process. So we could bait a monster into this, for example. Next, we have the Cloth Fly, which I really struggle to say, which apparently provides a shield buff. It's a butterfly that releases a cloud of dust when it's disturbed, and that dust gives you a tightening effect on your humanoid skin, temporarily increasing your defense. They can be found all over the place, and it's definitely something that will be useful mid-combat. Lastly, the Stink Mink. It's a type of weasel that releases a special smoke-like pheromone when used, which will attract nearby large monsters. So we could use this to lure monsters towards each other, because that could cause a turf war. Overall though, we're able to hold up to 5 hunting helpers in a helper cage now, and from there we'll be able to use them as items until the end of that quest. So we could pre-plan our attacks by gathering some of these before combat, or just grab them during combat and use them when we need to. Now, at the end of the trailer, we saw some extra details about the deluxe edition and a look at the special layered armor that comes with it. The KAMURA set in male and female, which looks great, and obviously makes us aware, as we knew, layered armor will be in Rise, which is a great system. It's a cosmetic reward for your efforts, and I've always liked that in my games. Though obviously this set comes from paying more money and buying a deluxe edition, which isn't as ideal. Plus, if you're unaware, pre-orders of the game will get this hilarious retriever costume and forest cat costume for your companions, which looks great but also derpy. And then also amiibo versions exist of the Palamute, the Palico, and Magna himself, and these give cool rewards like other amiibos in other games. Apparently each one will give you a different special layered armor set in Rise. Not sure what those are yet though. But absolutely lastly guys, in this colossal video, it's been announced. The Rise demo is coming January 2021. We will get our early hands-on with Rise to try out the game ourselves. As stated, if you do have Switch Online, we'll also be able to test it in multiplayer. This is huge news, and actually unexpected information because I thought we would get it later. So good though, I can't wait. This is going to be my first time playing a new Monster Hunter game at its release. I'm really happy with how Rise is looking. The movement, the freedom, the Wirebug abilities, the monsters with their yokai theme. It's incredible. But God, that was so much to talk about. I hope that was fun and useful. Hopefully you learned something or saw something you missed in the trailer. I went over absolutely everything. My favorite thing from the trailer is probably seeing the 2 monsters we were speculating about from their hilarious and silly minimal concept art. It's just good to see it in game and finally know, like, what is a real yokai styled monster? What would you say your favorite thing from the trailer is? For now though, that really is everything I've got. Thank you for all the support on my Rise videos so far. It's been great. But either way, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and I'll see you next time.